All right, so if you saw a couple weeks ago at this point, I was involved in another Twitter feud. Craig, what's going on? I don't know. This time about the ontological status of mathematics. Didn't last very long. Okay, guy jumped in, tried to argue that Gödel's incompleteness theorem was slam dunk. You see, mathematical nominalism is true. And I started pointing out that this literally has nothing to do with the ontological status of math. He started insulting me, and that's when I just kind of pulled away because I was like, if he keeps insulting me, I'm going to get mad. I'm going to start punching back. So I left you. If you recognize that you are the person here, I'm keeping your name out of it on purpose. You know, wasn't a good look for you. Okay, really, obviously, two people were trying to argue that Gödel's incompleteness theorem was somehow an argument in favor of mathematical nominalism. It is not. That shows complete ignorance of the philosophy of math. If you do not believe me, go look up formalism. What is formalism? A school of mathematics that no longer exists. Why? Because of Gödel's incompleteness theorem. Gödel's incompleteness theorem ended that school of mathematics. And I did a whole video on this, guys. Bertrand Russell, The Liar's Paradox. I didn't remember this. It's a really good video. No, we don't remember that video. All right, well, go back and watch. It's a really good one if I do say so myself. There's The Liar's Paradox, okay? I don't want to go into depth. I've already done a video on it. Bertrand Russell came up with a configuration in set theory that was basically like the liar's paradox as opposed to sets. I forget the exact configuration. It's like this set contains everything but what's in the set or something like that. And it precipitated a crisis in mathematics that was ultimately solved by what? Gödel's incompleteness theorem. Gödel's incompleteness theorem is an argument against relying on the formal logic of a system. It is completely agnostic on the ontological status of mathematical, but it leans towards Platonism. Formalism was a nominalist school in philosophy of math. So obviously these guys had no idea about the philosophy of math. They just assumed theist. He probably doesn't know what he's talking about. Let me flex on him, show my big brain, even though I don't really understand the topic. And the theist will just wilt away. And that's why he starts insulting me. And he starts pretending like I don't know what I'm talking about. General rule of thumb, if you are debating with me on Twitter and you think I'm the dumbass between you and me, it's going to be wrong. You're going to be really wrong. I do not engage in Twitter feuds on things that I don't know what I'm talking about. You don't see me jumping in on arguments about archaeology, correct? Anybody see me jump in on an argument about archaeology? No? Why? Because I don't know anything about it. If I am talking about something on Twitter, the idea that you're going to jump in and flex on me is really, really not a good idea. Why? Because I usually know what I'm talking about almost always more than anybody who jumps in on me. There's a couple people who know as much as me. But rare is the person who's going to jump in and like pull something and I'm like, oh God, I didn't even know that. That happened. It happened once. Okay? It did happen once. I forget what the guy's name is. He did come up with a good argument. And if it happens and the guy happens to be right, you go look at what happened. I don't remember who it was. Can picture is, I back down. I go, oh wow, I didn't even think of that. You're right. Solved. Simple. Why? I don't have a lot of writing on Twitter feuds, okay? Not fourth grade. I don't really care who wins Twitter feuds. I'm really not, I promise. The guy won a Twitter feud with me about 3 months ago. I forget what I was arguing, but I was like, oh wait, you're right. I didn't even think about that. Back down. That's exactly what I did. Why? Because he was right. It was really complicated. Like I said, not in fourth grade. But why were they fighting? Importantly, why were they fighting so vociferously to try and argue for mathematical Platonism? Because generally speaking, these were two of the smarter set atheists. Smarter set atheists kind of understand. Whereas this goes over the heads of a whole bunch of atheists, the smarter set atheists understand that they have something at stake with the ontological status of everything. If they sign off on a version of Platonic realism that is potentially lethally inconsistent with atheism, one of the guys started melting down about Platonic forms altogether. They don't make any sense. A whole meltdown. Now, here's the problem. Here's why I had no dog in the fight whatsoever. Even if they had good arguments about mathematical nominalism, they did not. I kept saying, present your good argument. They didn't present anything. They just kind of, Gödel's incompleteness theorem. Okay, that's not an argument. Yes, it is. You don't understand it. Yeah, I do really well. I've made videos on it. I think you don't understand it. I do so, stupid theist. That's more or less how it went. Do so. You're so dumb. You don't understand my argument. What argument would that be? The one I didn't present. Yeah, something like that. That's kind of how it went. You can go look. Esoterica jumped in. I don't know. The guy took his channel down. I'm pretty sure he was a theist, and he had a really good channel. If you're listening to this, put your channel back up. Why? It was really good. I think it's gone. But anyways, so why were they fighting tooth and nail? Why was the one guy melt down over the whole idea of Platonic forms? Because if you are a Platonic realist at all, okay, that is potentially really inconsistent with atheism, you are agreeing in principle that there is a transcendent, immaterial, invisible realm that undergirds and interacts with the known visible material world. As I've said in other videos, you're basically a theist by another name. Now here's the problem if you're a nominalist, and why I had no dog in the fight as it relates to mathematical nominalism. As I've said in other videos, there is no such thing as a sometimes nominalist. It's like an atheist. You're either a nominalist all in, or you are a nominalist. Those people who were arguing about the status of math, ontological status of math. Do you believe in the self? The self. There are Buddhists, schools of Buddhism that are nominalists about the self. Do you believe in the self? Yeah, then you're not a nominalist. Any time I bring up an abstract object or a transcendent category, any single solitary time, and there are at least 12, okay, there may be more, I haven't fully unpacked it all, but there are at least 12 that we know of. You have to be able to relegate it to the status of non-existent every single solitary time, or you're an anomalist. It's like saying, I'm an atheist, but there's this one type of prayer I do, and God sometimes shows up for that. Okay, then you're not an atheist. You're either an atheist all in, or you're not an atheist. You can't believe in God a little bit over here. Okay, you can't be a Platonic realist, small p Platonic realist a little bit over here. Then you're a Platonic realist, period. Period. That's why this is a killer argument, guys. That's why this is a killer argument. Why? Because there's no way out. Stephanie, as I said, is going to come up to you and she's going to ask you, what is the status of abstract objects given atheism? What is the status of abstract objects given atheism? A seemingly harmless question that is going to open up a whole plethora of contradictions and potentially lethal self-contradictions on your side, the atheist. And as I pointed out, it is an aggressive argument. It's designed to be aggressive, be aggressive. Stephanie is coming at you, and she's going to get inside your head, get up in your snout, and rattle your cage on purpose. Do you guys remember when I did the sleight of hand school of counter-apologetics? A lot of you pointed out that it was somewhat repetitive, but you actually really understand it now. Correct? Okay, it was somewhat repetitive on purpose so that you really get it. I'll say it one more time for those who haven't listened to the video. Again, a great video, by the way. Go check it out. No, really good. That one's really good. Both of them are really good. That one's really, really, really good. Promise. The sleight of hand school of counter-apologetics, the most common type of atheist argument. They roll up on the young earth creationists. They go, hey, young earth creationism is false. Then they start winning the debate. Why? Because young earth creationism is probably false. Then they take it a step further. They go further than what can logically be inferred. What can logically be inferred by them winning that debate? That young earth creationism is probably false. That's it. Nothing past that. They go, look, we're winning this debate. Ergo, Christianity is false. Ergo, God does not exist. None of which logically follow. Now, the problem for you, the atheist, if you understood that, and a lot of atheists don't even understand that. That's why I'm repeating this stuff, guys. Some of you get this quickly, Ron. Some of you get this, Ron. Ron's smart. Don't be fooled by the corn-pone exterior. Ron usually picks up on stuff pretty quick. He's intelligent. Okay? Not everybody is getting this. This is hard for a lot of people to grasp. That's why I go over things more than once. Okay? This is a pretty complicated. It's not fantastically complicated, but it's pretty complicated. So when Stephanie rolls up on the atheist, it is the same type of argument designed to get inside their head, rattle their cage, undermine their confidence in their worldview. Except the difference is what they can logically infer from the argument is actually what they can logically infer from the argument. There is a potential contradiction at the heart of atheism. Are you an atheist? Most atheists, I was watching a debate with Posh and Matt Dillahunty, and Posh was using the same argument, but just not quite as strong a version of it. And it didn't make sense to James. James stepped in a couple of times, tried to get him to flesh out the argument. I knew exactly what he was talking about. It's a very similar argument. He was using about materialism. Matt Dillahunty has said in that debate he's not a materialist, and I've heard him say he is also not a philosophical naturalist. Okay, that generally only leads empiricists. Most atheists will hold a position. They will say flat out, I'm a materialist, or I'm a naturalist, or I'm an empiricist. Okay, all three of those were originally, in their original configurations, were set out as closed-end systems, just like formal logic and math, a closed-end system. Okay, and let's take empiricism as our example. And just like for the empiricists, Okay, when Matt Dillahunty said he wasn't a materialist and he didn't state a philosophy in this video, I don't think he ever has. That's kind of smart. Why? Because if he never stakes out a claim, he never has to defend it. That's why he's doing that. He's only trying to win debates. Okay? That's where it's weak. Why? Because you should be about more than trying to win debates. You should be trying to flesh out a coherent worldview that actually makes sense and is defensible. That's what I think the point of the debate is. But anyways, you know, it's not just to win debates. I could care less who wins debates. I could care less who wins Twitter debates. I don't care at all. Care about the underlying core argumentation. I am building things here. That's the whole point. It's not about who wins anything at any one time. Don't care. If you did not win by the quality of your argumentation, I can revoke that victory at any time. Why? Just point out the flaws in the argument. Your friends are high-fiving you. A week, 3 weeks later, a video goes up and I go, look, he got everything wrong. And what are you going to do? If you got everything wrong, you got everything wrong. Doesn't matter if you won the debate that night. It's whether your argument was successful or not. Correct? Correct. Does everyone understand what I just meant? So, Matt Dillahunty, a little later on in the debate, starts getting really gay for science, as he is wont to do. Starts going like, science is the best way that we understand everything. We build models to predict outcomes. That's, you know, one of the most reliable paths to knowledge that the human species. He starts getting really gay for science, starts gushing over science. That's fine. Okay, here's the problem, Matt Dillahunty. Are you an empiricist? He won't say. But if he won't say, I won't say, Craig, I understand. We already covered that. He won't commit. But if you are an empiricist, okay, Hume was a good enough philosopher. He was the original empiricist, Hume, Locke, Berkeley, who undercut his own philosophy of empiricism right then and there. For a while, it was called Hume's problem of induction. It is now called the problem of induction. So Matt Dillahunty, when we're using science to figure everything out, okay, how do we know tomorrow is going to be the same as today as it pertains to science? Tell you what, we assume it. We assume it. We presuppose it. Something not part of the original configuration, transcendent to the system itself, that is a requirement, precondition of intelligibility, in order to ground the system. Without assuming the regularities of nature, empiricism can't get off the ground. Does everybody understand what I mean? Most of you know that well enough to know that that's the truth. If you don't know what I mean, you know, it's pretty easy to go get a couple videos and get up to speed. Every scientist, every single solitary scientist presupposes and assumes what? The regularities of nature. So when I boil water today and I find out it's 110 degrees or whatever it boils at, I don't have to boil it again tomorrow. I just assume the regularities of nature. That is a doozy of a presupposition, not accounted for by empiricism, by the way. Again, empiricism was originally configured as a closed-end system, predicated on what? The peripatetic axiom. There's nothing in the senses which does not, there's nothing in the intellect which does not first appear in the senses, which means you're supposed to be able to gather all your knowledge from out there in the world. You can't. And as I pointed out with my Kant arguments, you can't. As I pointed out with my Kant arguments, okay? Kant already successfully debunked Humean skepticism, Humean empiricism. He did. He wrote a book, The Critique of Pure Reason, where he was trying to find a synthesis between the empiricists and the rationalists. And guess what? He found one. Prior to empirical investigation, this is Kantianism in a nutshell. Okay, it's a paraphrasing, but you'll get the idea. We, as part of our cognitive architecture, have transcendental categories firmly in place prior to empirical investigation that are requirements, preconditions of intelligibility to get the whole thing off the ground. The one I used, everybody knows. He uses space and time. For example, simple to understand, that's why I use it. Even though that one technically might not be correct, simple to understand. If you've got a thing in front of you and breaking down the empirical facts of the item in front of you, you are never going to learn anything at all about space and time. Why? It's part of your conceptual framework prior to empirical investigation, precondition of intelligibility. That's very important. Why? Because what the guy Posh was trying to argue is that materialism fails on these grounds. What? It appeals to things not contained within its paradigm, transcendent to it. Now, he was an Eastern Orthodox. The Eastern Orthodoxes make one mistake, and they push the argument too far. So Matt Dillahunty kept saying, you keep trying to say God is the precondition. If you push the argument too far, you can't pin the atheist. The point of the argument, the one I'm giving to Stephanie, the point of the argument, she's going to go, she's going to ask you, what is the status of abstract objects given atheism? Matt Dillahunty, in that debate, said clearly, the laws of logic, I've heard him say this 1,000 times in other debates, the laws of logic exist, they are immaterial, transcendent, inviolate. Okay, the laws of logic exist. How do you justify the laws of logic given atheism? When he was in his debate with, this is why this is a killer argument, guys. Okay, Matt Dillahunty is possibly the best debater in the atheist community. You don't think he is? Okay, who are you again? Nobody, Craig, I understand that. That's why I asked the question. There was a thing, I made the joke in the other video, I'll make it again. Why is it a good joke? It's a good joke. Let's do it again. You'll find out. I torture my wife with the same jokes over and over and over again. We already know. You don't know nothing yet. There was the thing from Working Girl. Sometimes I sing and dance in front of the mirror in my underwear. Does it make me Madonna? Never will. Okay, you, the atheist listening to me, sometime you make arguments for atheism on Twitter and YouTube. Does it make you Matt Dillahunty? Never will. Got it? There ain't no Matt Dillahunty, Craig. You nailed it with that one. Thank you, Stephanie. Didn't need any help there, but yes, I nailed them. There ain't no Matt Dillahunty. That's for dang sure. You ain't no Matt Dillahunty. And he couldn't answer it. His answer was, he uses the laws of logic, ergo they exist. Do you understand that? Does everybody understand that? We don't have to argue for ontological status. Why? Because he uses it. How is somebody using something that doesn't exist? They aren't. Why? If you use something, it exists, correct? Okay, so he uses the laws of logic all the time to formulate his arguments. Ergo, they exist, they have ontological status. How does he justify him given atheism? His answer, literally, word for word, I'm not aware that I have to justify him. I'm not aware that you've demonstrated to me that I have to justify him. Why is that important? Because he's basically said I can't. An intelligent way of saying I can't, but I can't. Graham Oppy, one of the best philosophers in the atheist community, correct? Again, what atheists are you listening to me? You ain't no Graham Oppy. There ain't no Graham Oppy. You nailed him. So you nailed him all the time, Craig. I'm nailing him. You ain't no Graham Oppy. I'm a really good philosopher, Craig. I doubt it, but you ain't no Graham Oppy. His answer, ontological status of something like the laws of logic, brute fact. Okay, so two non-answers. Those are about the best answers you are going to get out of the atheist community. So when Stephanie asks you, what is the status of abstract objects given atheism? There isn't any really good answer. That's why this is a killer argument. Okay, it's meant to undermine your confidence in your own worldview, and it's successful. Why? Because you can logically infer that are potentially lethal self-contradictions in atheism. Lethal. That could discombobulate the whole idea of atheism. As I said, is your atheism predicated on materialism, empiricism, naturalism, all of which were originally configured as closed-end system, not having to appeal to anything transcendent to himself. If you grant ontological status to anything at all that is an abstract object, you have to be able to relegate all abstract objects to the status of non-existence. It's going to get really hard to do. Why? Because I do not think it can be done. Do you use a law of logic? Okay, then it exists. How are you using something that doesn't exist? There's no way to answer that other than self-refutation and pretzel logic. How are you using something that doesn't exist? You aren't. A law of logic exists. Why? You use it all the time to formulate your atheist ideas. Correct? Correct. Ergo, it exists. And there's almost no way to justify it given atheism. That's what Posh was trying to argue with Matt Dillahunty. Didn't come out all that well. Why? You got to be... Posh is a smart guy and he understands the philosophy, but it's this is why people do not respect presuppositional apologetics all that much. Why? Because it's hard to even argue the philosophy. It's not, rocket science, but it can get really abstract. Okay? So sometimes it gets hard, it's hard to argue. I wouldn't say Posh necessarily won the debate. James interrupted him a few times to try and figure out what he meant. I understood exactly where he was going. He was saying a materialist can't justify materialism. Why? Because it is appealing to something outside of materialism, transcendent, that is not categorized or accounted for by materialism. Simple. Even there, I fried somebody's brain. Simple. That sounds like word salad. Yeah, simple, word salad. Okay, even there, I probably fried somebody's brain. It's not word salad. I'm not sure if I'm explaining it clearly enough in this video for you to understand just how killer this argument actually is, but we're going to go over it a few times. Well, it's a killer argument. And as I said, the best and the brightest in the atheist community have no answer. So this is almost exactly how it will play out. Stephanie will roll up on the atheists and go, what is the status of abstract object given atheism? And she will wrestle, she will get into a fight the best and the brightest, the top tier atheists, the top 20 or 10% to a draw. They'll be able to successfully argue something that sounds halfway credible. No, they won't say gold is a completeness theorem. Gold is a completeness theorem. We got you, Stephanie. No, that's it. But they will be able to successfully argue something. Okay? The bottom 80%, maybe the bottom 50%, won't even know what the F she's talking about. I can tell by the comments I get on my videos. Most of the atheists have no idea what I'm talking about. And they plug in tropes, atheist tropes, and try and finesse like they understand. Even Dr. Matthew Hunt. That's why that got so heated with me and him. Why? Because he totally misrepresented the argument. Because he didn't understand it. Why didn't he understand? I guess he's bright enough to understand it, but he's spent his entire life saying philosophy is so stupid, I don't need to know anything about philosophy. Then he tries to argue a high-level philosophy argument without knowing anything about it. He embarrassed himself while he was doing it. Goes, you think that abstract ideas are a challenge for atheism? Abstract ideas? What? No. Then I asked him, do you know what an abstract object is? He puts down some erudite definition of a circle. Okay, that doesn't answer the question, dude. What are you doing? What is going on? I'm sure he could get up to speed. A lot of people don't think he's smart. I'm pretty sure he is. I'm pretty sure he is a mathematician, as he says. Why? Because sometimes he says things that are erudite as it pertains to math that seem to be on point. It could be wrong, but it usually seems to me like he's saying something close to intelligent. It's not easy for people to do that. You can't really fake something like that. A dumbass couldn't pretend to be a mathematician and then come out with something that looks plausibly like something a mathematician would say. They wouldn't even know where to start. So obviously he's got to have some innate intelligence. That's usually why I would bother getting into debates with him. Because it's kind of fun. Yeah, he's gimmicky and dopey, but he's also kind of smart. So it was kind of fun and interesting. It was more fun than, just a dopey atheist. But anyways, probably never do that again. Why? Because that one wasn't fun. I got really sick of that. Didn't want to talk to him ever again. So Hunt, I think we might be finished. I love you. I think we're done. I think we're breaking up, dude. Now, getting back to the issue at hand. Okay, so all atheisms, all philosophies that undergird atheism, particularly materialism, empiricism, naturalism. I don't know that there are any other ones. Physicalism too, that is materialism essentially. Okay, the original logical positivists. Did I already say this? Logical positivism was almost every atheist out there is a logical positivist or too close to it. You ask them, they will say to you, do you have any evidence? What do they mean? Empirical evidence. You go, what about philosophical evidence? They go, philosophy's over. Okay, that's a logical positive. They go, empirical evidence, it's the only thing that counts as evidence. You say, what about philosophy? Philosophy's over. Logical positivism is the philosophy that there's no such thing as philosophy. Self-refuting by definition, essentially. Then there was Hume, who was the first logical positivist. He was the first person who tried to argue that the metaphysics of there are no metaphysics. If you're one of these people out there arguing the metaphysics of there are no metaphysics, Craig, okay, really simple counter argument. Look around your room. Do you see a pen? Grab the pen. Okay, what's in your hand? A pen. How do you know? You just told me to grab a pen, so I grabbed a pen. Okay, you just did metaphysics, Mr. Metaphysics of no metaphysics. You just did metaphysics. Hello, gotcha. The metaphysics of no metaphysics is also incoherent and self-refuting. Why? In your hand is a pen. A metaphysical construct. A metaphysical denotation by virtue of its functionality. There's no such thing as the metaphysics doesn't have to mean like angels and demons and all this spooky spiritual stuff. It means what something in fact is. What is in your hand, in fact, is a pen. Why? Because that's what I told you to pick up. There's a metaphysical denotation by virtue of its functionality. The reason why certain types of physicalists think we could do away with metaphysics is because that's how they started practicing science. When you're actually practicing pure science, you do away with philosophy and you do away with metaphysics. Why? Because you are building a model to predict an outcome. Metaphysics gets in the way. So if you had a table and a chair, or a table and a pen, in a scientific project, you'd say, set of properties X and set of properties Y. You do away with the metaphysical constructs. Why? Because it gets in the way. Build a model to predict an outcome of how these properties interact. Okay, but then when you come back in the real world, you put metaphysics right back in place. When you're looking around your room, what do you see? Metaphysics. It's a table, a chair. That's all metaphysics, guys. Doesn't have to mean, demons and angels and all that stuff. That's what it's morphed into over the years. But all it means is denotation of what something in fact is. There's no such thing as the metaphysics of no metaphysics. There's an incoherent idea. Just like the philosophy of no philosophy is an incoherent idea. Just like nominalism is ultimately a potentially incoherent idea too. What is nominalism trying to argue? That this is just a convenient label for what? For this thing that doesn't actually exist. It's a convenient label for what? For a thing that doesn't exist. So you're labeling something that doesn't exist. It's what nominalism is, guys. Hello, did you hear me, nominalist? That's what nominalism is. You are labeling something that doesn't exist. The easiest one to debunk nominalism is universals versus particulars. A nominalist is trying to argue that there is no such thing, literally trying to argue. Now, they don't piece it out this way. Why? Because they'll lose the debate, and they know that. But they are literally trying to argue that there is no such thing as, generally speaking, cats, even though that's what taxonomy is predicated on. That's what that debate boils down to. There's a lot of different places where there are abstract objects. The nominalist has to be able to relegate them all to the status of non-existence. Why? Because you can't be a halfway nominalist. If you're a tiny little bit of a platonic realist here, there, or anywhere, here, making each day of the year. It's here, there, and everywhere. It's a Beatles song. You don't know it? Changing my life with the way... I forget the lyrics. There's no such thing as a halfway nominalist. Okay, you have to be able to relegate all abstract objects that anybody can bring up, all transcendent categories, to the status of non-existence. Other than that, you're a platonic realist. Maybe a small p platonic realist, but a platonic realist nevertheless. Which, according to me, and I think my definition is going to hold, you are theist by another name. Why? Because you believe in principle there's a transcendent immaterial realm that undergirds and interacts with the known visible material world. That is theism. All types of theists believe that. So you have a theist-leaning worldview, you just haven't populated with gods yet. Or God. You get it now? Now, there are atheists who are trying to reconcile, okay, Thomas Nagel being the most famous, abstract objects to atheism. I'm just telling you that I really don't think it can be done. I think there's a potentially completely self-contradiction buried at the heart of atheism. And you being the atheist, you say evidence-based conclusions is your jam, right? You want to believe that which is true. Okay, if there is lethal self-contradiction in atheism, as I'm starting to evidence very strongly the case, then you should jettison atheism. Why? Because it doesn't work. That's why. Because it doesn't work. Most atheists are part of the matter and motion that all there is crew. Matter and motion is all there is, except that it isn't. When you actually break things down to its fundamental building blocks, there's matter and motion, all there is nothing, which is logical positivism, which is self-refuting and incoherent. When you actually break down matter and motion to its fundamental building blocks, you have what? Transcendent immaterial other than matter and motion. That's the point. Transcendent categories, abstract objects, things not accounted for by materialism, by naturalism, by empiricism. Ergo, those systems fail. Why? Because they rely on something transcendent to them as the precondition of intelligibility. It's a killer argument, guys. It's a killer argument. I'm not sure if I'm saying it clear enough in this video for you to understand that this is a killer argument. Like I said, the top tier atheists will probably be able, Stephanie will probably be able to wrestle them to a draw. The bottom 50% atheists will have no idea what I'm even talking about. None, zero, not a chance of coming up with the rejoinder. They'll try to plug in atheist tropes that don't make any sense. Why? Because they won't understand it. It's not, it's not nuclear physics, but it's high level enough that I've already seen by their comments that they have no clue what I'm talking about. Dr. Matthew Hunt could understand it. Okay, you can't pretend you understand it when you don't. Why? Because you embarrass yourself. But he's easily capable enough if he listened to three or 4 hours worth of philosophy videos, maybe 5 or 6, 10, maybe 10, then he'd get up to speed on what abstract objects actually are. Then he'd be able to understand the argument. Barring that, no, he's got nothing to say. Why? Because he just doesn't know philosophy. He said he only took one philosophy course once and didn't like it. What is unique about logical positivism is that it was a school of philosophy that was thoroughly debunked and yet profoundly influential. Figure that one out. Almost every atheist today is a logical positivist of one sort or another. Every single famous scientist you know is a materialist and a scientismist. Scientism is the influence of logical positivism. Scientism is still with us and it's still going strong. It is the stepchild, the demented stepchild of logical positivism. It is the philosophy that we don't need philosophy to do science. Why? Because we're scientists. We're so super smart. We build models and predict outcomes. Ultimately, that is self-refuting and incoherent too. Why? Because you base your models and your outcomes off of what? Clear, cogent, interpretive frameworks. That's philosophy. That's philosophy, dumbass. I swear to God. It's possible to be really, really intelligent and totally obtuse dumbass at the exact same time. I won't say Dr. Matthew Hunt, but no Dr. Matthew Hunt. That's why I believe he's intelligent. Why? Because he's both. He seems to be really intelligent in one way and then totally obtuse in another way. Because he doesn't really want to learn the things he doesn't know. Why? Because he wants to flex. Wants to flex on everybody. Oh, I'm super intelligent. Rah. Same thing with the other guys. The guys who argued, if you're one of those people who argued Gödel's incompleteness theorem, you're capable of understanding what Gödel's incompleteness theorem is. You just don't know it yet. Because you didn't bother to research it when you laid it down on Twitter. So you have no idea what it actually says. That's fine. It's not an argument for mathematical Platonism at all. Those guys are capable of it, I can tell. Why? Because they're smart. They're not stupid. Part of it is they're used to just flexing on Christians all the time. That's a big part of it. They think they're just going to roll up on a Christian and go, oh, here's how smart I am. Let me reference something. And I'm going to go, oh my God, this guy's so smart, I better run. Even Stephanie, I turned into Stephanie for a second. I better run, Craig. No, Stephanie, you're staying in this fight. I'll come. I'll tear out their eyeballs. Okay, Stephanie, rule number 1. You are exposing your fear of them when you automatically go to something really violent and intense. I understand your passion. It's very convincing. But you're actually doing what they do. I don't follow, Greg. I'm nailing them. I'll kill their children, and I'll tear out their... All right, relax. Do you not get it? That's what they do. They roll up on me and pretend I'm dumb. And they dial up the argument to 11 when it doesn't have to be. Why? Because they're intimidated. They don't know why this dumb theist is showing something upstairs, but they can't process it correctly. Why? Because they're used to theists being stupid. That's their presupposition. They think the theist is stupid. And it's really hard for them to understand that the dumbass between me and them is them. Really hard for them to process that out. That's why the guy kept insulting me, even though it was clear he didn't know what he was talking about at all. Why? Because in his worldview, the theist is always the stupid one. That's a presupposition I did not share when I was growing up. This is probably why it was so easy for me to become a theist. I didn't become a theist until I was 29 years old. When I was growing up, the smart kid was the stoner philosopher, right? Everybody knows that person. Did you ever go to a Dead show? They were almost always intelligent. They were always theists. They weren't Christians, but they were always into the Bhagavad Gita or this theism or that theism. They were always theists. They always believed in the universe, bro. The universe answered me. And they were always smart. So I never had any dog in the fight as pertains to intelligence. I didn't watch YouTube apologetics. I didn't have any presupposition that theists are automatically dumb by virtue of being theists. Most atheists think that automatically. And it's really hard for them to think otherwise. They think you're automatically the stupid one, and even when they don't understand the arguments you're making, they just go, word salad. I don't understand what Craig's saying, but it's got to be word salad. Why? Because he's a theist. There go, he's the dumb one. They reveal that to me all the freaking time. They almost automatically assume I'm the dumb one between them and me. Guess what, guys? I'm not. Promise. I promise. I promise. I know who the smart people in the atheist community are. I can name them by name. I know who they are, and I pay attention to what they do. And I don't even think they got anything on me. I don't think they can handle this argument. I really don't. I think this argument is rock solid and irrefutable. I might not have presented it in its final form yet so that you all see that it's rock solid and irrefutable, but I think it is. I think it points to an actually lethal... Keep in mind, the best philosopher in the atheist community is Thomas Nagel. He has been working on trying to reconcile abstract objects to atheism for well nigh a decade. He hasn't done it yet. Why hasn't he done it yet? Because I do not think it can be done. You are agreeing in principle to something that is suspiciously close to theism. That's what attracted me to presuppositions to begin with. I noticed that in Jay Dyer versus Matt Dillahunty. Matt Dillahunty was agreeing in principle to the existence of something that sounded suspiciously close to God. Yes, the laws of logic exist. They're immaterial, transcendent, inviolate, other than matter and motion. That sounds suspiciously close to God, doesn't it? Okay, the presupposition at the heart of science that gets the whole thing off the ground. There is an argument called the nominalistic argument for the existence of God that is just based off of that presupposition. The regularities of nature. It's a halfway decent argument. I haven't unpacked it yet. There is a lot here. There is a lot here. And I haven't even gotten started yet. Okay? So, there's a lot in these arguments. Philosophically, there is a lot here, guys. And honest to God, I haven't even started. Haven't even started yet. This is just the beginning of me constructing the argument, and I'm doing it right in front of you, so you can see. There's literally almost nothing you can do. If you're following the logic of where I'm going thus far, there's literally almost nothing to argue against. If you are a nominalist, okay, you have to be a nominalist round the boards. Every time I bring up an abstract object or transcendent category, you have to be able to relegate it to non-existence. Cannot be done. I don't think it can be done. Pretty sure it can't be. Like I said, do you believe in the self? Okay, then you're a Platonic realist as pertains to the self. There's a lot of transcendence. Do you believe in the past? A true nominalist thinks there's no such thing as a past. Again, can't be empirically verified for. There are people out there who will literally argue there are no such thing as a past, as the past. Are you one of those people? No? Then you're not a nominalist. Gotcha. Gotcha! Gotcha! Gotcha. And why is this a better argument than the atheist argument? Because Stephanie is designed to get up in your cage, rattle your snout, undercut your confidence in atheism altogether as a worldview and a paradigm of reality. It is a worldview analysis, worldview to worldview, precept to precept, item by item, line by line. If your worldview does not stand critical investigation, if you take it out brick by brick and if the bricks fall apart because ultimately it is predicated on something that is at its core self-refuting and incoherent, that should give you pause. It should make you re-examine what? The foundations of your worldview. Atheism is not a worldview. Okay, doesn't matter. The building block of what atheism actually is a worldview. You're either materialist, empiricist, and naturalist. One of those three. None of them work. Why? Because they're originally configured as self-contained systems. Emerson Green is smart enough to understand that there's an issue here. That's why he's calling himself a spooky naturalist. He's trying to literally transcend naturalism. Literally broaden the category to include things not included by the original configuration of naturalism. You understand now? If he keeps going, he will eventually become a theist. He's eventually broadened it out to include the gods. And yeah, it's literally going to be almost impossible for you to sign off on the reality of an abstract object, an immaterial transcendent entity that is not available for empirical investigation without seeing it as suspiciously close to theism. Why? Because it is. That's the point. Because it is. Okay? We're clear? Does everyone understand? I admit this video was a little bit choppier, but I'll probably post it. If you hear this video, I posted it. If you don't hear this video, never mind. So there you have it, kids. That is all for now. Mass has ended. Go in peace. Amen.